Let's Talk Property webinar begins in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And we're live.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Property. It's our weekly thought leadership webinar brought to you every Wednesday at this time by real estate investor and Eland Property Group. My name is Neil Peterson, founder and editor-in-chief of Real Estate Investor, a digital content and resource platform, and also a Digimag for property investors. And I really am honored to be your host today. We host this every alternate week, and I share the hosting seat along with Derek Watts and Eugene Boniface at this time every Wednesday to bring you the very latest news, views, insights, and investment opportunities on everything around real estate in South Africa and the globe. So this is the place to be every Wednesday, where we believe people can get the best advice on investments along with our expert panelists. And every week we bring you these expert panelists. So we're here to assist, educate you, guide you, inspire you, and give you access to property practitioners, investment experts, and advice that can help you navigate your property businesses, your investments, improve your lives better, especially now when people need it most through really tough times we're experiencing as a result of COVID-19. Very different times, the new normal as they call it. So I'd like to introduce our topic today. Our webinar focuses today on investing into retirement property. And I want to welcome our panelists, our expert panelists, who are all professionals in the retirement game. And we'll hear from them a little bit later when they introduce themselves. And we really look forward to your valuable insights and knowledge. And to you, the audience, a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. We welcome your interactivity and your participation in today's webinar. So please keep those questions flowing. So if you want to send the questions, there is a Q&A box you'll see on the bottom of the screen that you'd like to pose to the panelists. Please identify the panelists and pose your question anytime during the webinar, and we will deal with it when we get halfway through the webinar. So let's keep it interactive. Then we will also have a poll and a question poll that will come up on your screen at various intervals during the webinar with various multiple choice questions that we'll ask you to vote on. So we welcome your input onto that as well. So let's move on to today's topic. It's called investing in retirement property. Now, we know that investing into a retirement property for any future retiree is a big decision they need to make. And besides, of course, the decision making in buying a house you live in. So it does require extensive research with a number of important considerations that we need to evaluate. I mean, this could be the last property that you invest in before your golden years. So we need to make sure that we get the right advice. So when investing in a retirement property, you need to understand all the mechanics of the retirement property offering. And there are fundamental differences that the buyer needs to be aware of compared to buying a house or investing in a buy-to-let property. So it's highly specialized knowledge. So in this webinar, we will unpack what makes good retirement property investments, such as the location, areas that have proximity to amenities, restaurants, medical, shopping malls, etc., beaches, and access to transport. Quality of the construction layout, the developer's track record and reputation, the buying model, what is sectional title, life rights, do have their advantages and disadvantages, but you need to understand those differences. Health and frail care facilities, security of property or estate, and levies and overheads and that kind of thing. These are the things we need to know. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our panelists. In fact, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So first of all, I'd like to ask Jimmy. Jimmy, if you could introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jimmy Dupree. I'm a professional real estate agent. working for Seif Properties in Pretoria. I'm part of the East branch, east of Pretoria, and that's where my knowledge comes from. I am doing retirement villages as my speciality in a specialized field. And yes, I'm going to today share with you guys what I can. As far as retirement villages are concerned, I've got a passion for the older people, being a senior myself, and I hope I can be of assistance to everybody this morning.
Great. Thank you, Jimmy. Wonderful having you on Let's Talk Property. Thank you very much. Barry, if you could welcome yourself, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Barry Kagan. I'm the founder and CEO of Aureus Senior Living. We own, operate, and develop senior living communities around South Africa. And it's great to be on the show. We've been doing this for about 4 years now. So
wonderful
for having me.
Well, fantastic, Barry. We look forward to hearing from you a little bit later and having good discussions. Okay, our next panelist is Alison Watt. Alison, can you please introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Alison. I run the Retirement Village Managers Summit as well as Retirement Village Developers Summit. We focus on the management of retirement villages to support the managers, so that when you as a buyer want to go and look at a retirement village, you're getting the benefit of all that knowledge that they are actually receiving and that they are professionals.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alison. It's wonderful having you here. Okay, our next guest is Lee. Lee, would you please introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Morning, everybody. My name is Lee Maingard. I've been in the property management and sectional title industry for the last 25 years, and I look forward to being of assistance doing this there.
Wonderful. Nice to have you on board, Lee, and we look forward to some nice discussion around sectional title and life rights a little bit later. Arthur, welcome to you, and please introduce yourself to the audience today.
Hi, everybody. I'm Arthur Case. I'm based in Cape Town. I spent the second half of my career in the healthcare and retirement industries. Those two industries clip very well together. The last 12 years has been in the retirement village industry, developing and operating retirement villages, and also had a lot to do with the Life Right model, which I think is on your agenda this morning. I'm now actually starting a new venture in the retirement space, which is based on the Age in Place model, a company called ResCare, of which I am one of the co-founders and the CEO. Look forward to the debate.
Wonderful. It's great having you, Arthur, and look forward to also hearing about your new venture as well. Okay, so let's get into the questions and to our panelists, and obviously we encourage you, the audience, also to please fire away with questions throughout the webinar. So Jimmy, we're going to start off with you. You've been in property sales and management game for quite a while, but you have in the latter years started to focus more on properties in the retirement sector, assisting senior citizens planning their retirement investments, and you spend a lot of time understanding them and what their needs are. Which factors would you warrant as serious considerations before investing into a retirement property?
Barry, yeah, I think we're talking today about, and I think everybody's thinking about the financial aspect of investment. I want to touch on a few points that cut a little bit deeper and deeper than the financial ones. You must remember, I work with the elderly. They come to you, they're unsure of what to do, you know, they need some advice and some guidance and so on. And I avoid to start off with the finances, because that may give people a scare. And first of all, I try to get involved with a person and try and find out what is the situation and so on. And you know, the relocation of older people is a result of their retirement, and dare I say that the Act on Housing Development Scheme for Retired Persons refer to these people as age 50 and older. So retirement must then be seen as a positive, and it's a new phase in a person's life. It will also be most probably the last phase, and that's scary. This thought and then the stress of relocation to a new home warrants careful consideration. And the most important step in this whole process is the whole thing about the mind change. And people need to make the mind change before anything is taken into consideration. Now, I've experienced successes and failures with these relocations, and they all relate back to the mind change or the lack of that. Now, there are some other terms that, and once you understand this and you've made them the mind change, it's easier to answer the next questions. And it's then, what kind of a lifestyle would I like to pursue? Where are we going to relocate to? And how far are we going to move away from our current support base? And where we go, what is it going to take to get a new support base on the go? Are there the necessary facilities to support our quality of life? And when are we going to relocate? And yes, then obviously the financial side comes into it. And can we afford to retire and sustain ourselves further? Now, this new phase then awaits retirees, and I'm telling you, you will find that it may be the most exciting, maybe the most relaxing, and maybe the most fulfilling time that you're going to enter of all.
So just elaborate just a little bit more on the mind change. Is it the mind change of saying, I'm going to move from my house into a retirement facility? Do you want to just elaborate just a little bit more what you mean by that mind change?
Well, all people at one stage are taking the jump to downscale. And my advice to people, and let's talk about the elderly, maybe not 50 years, but let's talk about people older than. The first thing is, where are we going to do it to? And what are we going to, and it's a downscaling situation. And a lot of people are thinking, the elderly are thinking of doing the hop, skip and jump, as I call it. You know, I'm in a big house. I've been living in this house for 40 years now. I'm just going to go a bit smaller. Let me just take a small jump and then we'll settle there. And 5 years or so on later, we'll then take the bigger jump and go to retirement or to a smaller place. My advice would be, yeah, it's going to be a stressful situation, whether you do it now to a smaller house and then to a small place or to retirement or a retirement village, is take the jump and do the small from really big and go to small. And that change is very, very difficult in everybody's mind. And that's the big decision to make. And unfortunately, I have found in the past couple of years that people have made a mistake by doing this hop, skip and jump. And really, sometimes only 2 or 3 years in the smaller house, can I call it outside retirement, and then suddenly decides to, oh gosh, now we've made a mistake. Let's go now to retirement. And unfortunately, let's come back to the financial situation. It is a big financial setback if you have to sell within 2 or 3 years and taking all the costs involved with that. And the elderly can't afford that. So it's very important that they take that decision, do the mind change. My advice is people, you know what, if you are around about the age 68, that would be a good time to start trying to change the mind. And by the age of about 70, 72, you must be in your new environment. And I always suggest be that the retirement village.
Excellent. Thank you, Jimmy. Wonderful input there. Barry, you're a developer of retirement villages, specifically in the Gauteng areas, I understand now. What should people be looking for in a retirement village? Barry?
Thanks, Neil. Sorry, I was muted there. Thanks.
Okay, not a problem.
I'll talk a little bit about what people should be looking for in a retirement village, and also I'll pick up on a few of the points raised from Jimmy. I think the first one and the most important point for people, and Jimmy, you raised it and you mentioned looking to move to a new area and find a new support base. You know, people don't want to do that. People generally retire or want to move into a community which is in the same area that they're currently living in. And the global statistic, and we see it we do a lot of research on what happens globally. South Africa is probably 20 to 30 years behind where the rest of the world is. Sorry, not the rest of the world. A lot of countries in the rest of the world. Some countries are exactly the same place we are. But if you look at Australia, New Zealand, and the US, you know, they've got very developed markets and very well-researched markets, and there's a lot of information well, there's a lot we can learn from them. Let's put it that way, and we endeavour to do that all the time. So the first thing is on the location. So people don't want to move far from where they're currently living, and they don't want to move far from where their families are, from where their kids are. So generally, in any senior living community, and we don't like to use the word retirement village. I know this is about retirement. Retirement is actually a bit of a, if you look in the dictionary under the word retirement, it says to put out of service or to withdraw. That's actually what retirement is. That's not what people want to do. Nobody wants to do that. I wouldn't want. I don't want to be put out of service.
So we should change the concept.
Well, that's why we say but be that as it may. Sorry, I'm getting a bit sidetracked here. So
no, that's fine.
Generally, the global statistic is that people look to live within a 6 to 8 kilometer radius of where they're currently living. And we see in our communities that that's exactly true. If we look at our waiting lists, your waiting list comes from 6 to 8 kilometers around where you are. So location, I'm answering your question in a bit of a roundabout way, but location is one of the very important points to consider in looking for a senior living community. The other one is what we call that continuum of care. So ensuring that as and when your needs change, or if they change, I should say, because people often have this perception that you go into a senior living community and all of a sudden you're next thing you're in the frail care. It's not true. It doesn't. That doesn't happen. So one needs to think if your needs change, not necessarily when, but if your needs change, you need to make sure that you have the support and care that you need to not have to move elsewhere, as Jimmy said. You don't want to move twice. So an important thing is for people to understand what care and what support is available in these communities that they're looking at within the area in which they want to be. A lot of these communities that call themselves retirement village don't actually have any care and support, well, minimal care and support, if at all. And a lot of them have very extensive care and support. So they need to understand what that continuum of care is within that environment that they're looking for. The other point that they need to consider is the quality of the operator. What is their track record? Do they have other facilities? Who are they? You know, what is their operating model? And the best way to do this, to be quite honest with you, it's like quite basic, but most people don't think about it. Just talk to the residents of the retirement village independently. You know, you don't have to believe the marketing stuff. Go speak to the people who live there and ask them, what is your experience of living here? How have you found it? Have they lived up to the promises they made to you when you moved in? What is the day-to-day service level of service like, et cetera, et cetera? And that's, to me, that's the best way of understanding the quality of the operator. But of course, there are other ways, publicly available information, you know, the marketing material, speaking, engaging with the operator, and just getting a sense of their philosophy and the care that they, I don't mean care for people, I mean just the care and the diligence that they deploy in running their business. And the last one is a little bit counterintuitive. Sorry, I might have overstepped my time. But the last one, a little bit counterintuitive, and that's the monthly levies. And it's an important consideration for everybody because everyone's very, you know, cognizant of the fact that they are probably retired in the traditional sense and that they're living on a certain income. But the point I'm trying to make on levies and why I say it's counterintuitive is if the levies seem very low, be concerned. Because what it probably means is the level of service is not necessarily what you're going to get, or you're going to get a shock at some point in time and the levy is going to escalate dramatically, or there's going to be some kind of a special levy or something like that. So just understand what the levies are, compare them to your cost of current living in your house or wherever you are, and just get a feel for, is it too good to be true? If it's too good to be true, there might be cause for concern. So that would be so what I'm saying is understand the levy structure, understand what's included, and also understand how it's going to escalate and what surprises could come in the future, because what you don't want is surprises. Our levy structure is fixed into the future. There's no surprises, but obviously they all vary. So I think that's a very important consideration.
I think it's also. So Alison, you are next. Alison,
just a quick thing. going on from Barry, is they need to find out what's included in the levies.
Okay, no, I think a good point. So Alison, I just want to, because, you know, I wanted to give a little bit of a background, you know, to your input, which you are next. And I mean, your focus in the last 20 years has been on retirement villages and also public health. Yes, I call it retirement, we call it senior living. And I think that, you know, you got a bit of a satellite view. So what do you think, maybe added on to what Barry has just said, is the most important aspects a property developers should consider before they develop retirement development? And also, there seems to be a big focus on the high-end senior living villages. Do you want to maybe just comment on those two?
Yes, I think the developers have, in the last, historically, certainly in the last 5 to 10 years, focused more on the high end, which is million and above mark, whereas now, and especially since COVID, they are people's ability to be able to sell their properties, number one, for the price that they want. Two, the investments that they've made will have been affected by the stock exchange, which will have had an impact because of the economy and COVID. It is what it is. I was speaking to someone earlier at the beginning of COVID, and they ran a series of, well, they ran a series of villages, and he estimated that people's retirement villages investments would be affected by between 18 to 25% negatively. That is a huge knock to take, because they can't add to their sum, so their standard of living will be negatively affected. The other thing is that more and more people need to stretch their money further, which means middle of the road, up to the 2 million rand mark. So almost that they are doing a swap between their current home and the one they're going to be replacing with at a retirement village. So that their investment is used to be living on, not to buy. And
okay.
yeah, I think those are the most important things.
Okay. All right, Lee. Now, Lee, we're going to probably get into a big debate just now, and you know, in terms of sectional title versus life rights, and you know, other options. Now, you're a sectional title expert and trainer. I mean, how do the rules of a retirement scheme differ from that of a normal title scheme? Assuming obviously the retirement scheme is in fact a sectional title development, because which they're not all. Do you want to maybe just comment on that?
So obviously the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act has prescribed management and conduct rules. So those are the rules that are already, as I said, prescribed, and that can be used by a scheme, you know, if it's not amended. But you know, in a lot of developments where the developer, and obviously retirement village is a good example, where the developer actually has the opportunity to amend or change the rules before the first transfer takes place. So it's a great opportunity for the developer to actually design its rules, or the rules for that scheme, around the way that the development is actually going to be developed going forward. If that's not the case, then obviously the body corporate structure still remains in place, and then the members, who are obviously the owners of the sections and the units, would need to go through a process where they change the rules to specifically apply to their estate. So you know, the best opportunity is obviously for the developer to think about how the development will be put together, what all the services are that they're going to promise to everybody, and obviously build into the scheme, and then to build the rules around that. You know, if that's done with forward planning and thinking from the developer's side, then it's much easier for the owners, once they've actually living in the scheme, to adhere to those rules. It becomes very, very difficult, you know, if the rules are not changed or amended by the developer up front, for the members to actually apply their minds to it. And yes, you know, obviously members and bodies corporate can use external experts like legal attorneys or you know, legalese that specialize in sectional title to amend those rules for them. But again, there's a process to be, you know, sectional, there's special general meetings that need to take place. The members need to attend those meetings. And a lot of times there's so much debate about the proposed changes that sometimes the rules are not even passed. So, you know, the rules is, like I said, unless the developer is amending it, it will be prescribed as per the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act, and then it's up to the members to change those rules as they feel.
Right. So just in terms of the trustees, who and how are the trustees elected? And are there alternatives to the normal trustees being appointed?
Yeah, it's a very good point. And I think, you know, what's important here is obviously, you know, people that move into retirement, you know, they might actually move from an existing sectional title scheme where they might have lived. Or, you know, if they're living in a freehold environment, then obviously it could be a very challenging environment to move into. Regarding the trustees, I mean, the trustees are appointed from the members in the scheme. So, you know, you might find that the older generation don't want to necessarily get involved in committees and sit in meetings and decide on things and apply the rules of the scheme. But the principle is that the trustees are elected from the members in the scheme, and those will be the owners that own units and sections in the scheme. But, you know, in 2016, October 2016, the old Sectional Title Act changed, and it became still the Sectional Title Act, but there's now also the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act. And why that's significant is that in the new Sectional Title Schemes Management Act, there's an opportunity for a body corporate to actually appoint an executive managing agent. What that means is that the body corporate will appoint a professional. You know, it would need to be somebody that obviously understands sectional title, but an executive managing agent will then take over the control of the management of the scheme. The trustees, in effect, they exist, but they don't participate in the decision taking that the executive manager agent takes. And the executive manager agent only has the responsibility to meet with the members every 4 months, and then to go through the finances of the scheme, the maintenance, any potential maintenance that might be taken or needs to be taken, decisions need to be taken on. The other opportunity is for what is commonly as an executive trustee or professional trustee, a person that doesn't own in the scheme. And as a matter of interest, you know, a trustee doesn't have to be a member in the scheme, so it could be somebody externally. But a professional trustee would be somebody that's not a member of the scheme, but their purpose is to be on the board of trustees, and that person will then get paid. So the body corporate would have to budget for that person's fee to participate and be involved in the management of the scheme. So there are opportunities for these kind of developments in normal developments as well. It doesn't have to necessarily be a retirement development.
Okay, I just want you to just add one more on the levies, because I think it's quite important. Earlier on, Jimmy was talking about the costs and, you know, cost of living and all that kind of stuff. So I think if you can, and I'm not picking on you, I think it's very important to elaborate just on the sectional title, and we're going to get to Arthur. I think he's an expert in the life rights. We're going to hear that side, but that's going to be a debate later. But what are the costs associated to living in a sectional title retirement scheme? And I mean, would it be fair to assume that there may be more than just the normal residential scheme? Because obviously a lot of other services, etc.
Look, you know, sectional title living in general is supposedly cheaper than living in a freehold. I mean, you can just imagine that the simple example of if you're living in a freehold or standalone house, you're responsible for 100% of all the expenses that you need to pay for your house. So every single time that you need to do a little bit of maintenance, 100% of that expense is going to be for your pocket. In sectional title, it's different. You participate in a PQ value. So you pay a contribution towards the maintenance of the scheme. And that would include things like the auditing fee, the insurance, and then any general maintenance. So you don't actually carry 100% of all the expenses for the scheme. So, you know, something that Barry mentioned is that, you know, if you look at the levies of a development, if they are very low, then you should be worried, and quite rightly so, because, you know, unfortunately in the past, and one of the big reasons why the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act and the acts changed a couple of years ago was that bodies corporate were just not being managed financially very well. And what happened is that the the owners would keep the levies as low as possible, but would never actually think about forward planning. And then they would get to a situation where major maintenance has to be done to the scheme, and then suddenly a special levy has to be raised. So that is extremely important. It's a very good point that we raised at that point. And the same applies, if the levies are extremely high, it's also, you need to be clever and you need to understand why you're paying such a high levy. And there might be a lot of benefits that you're getting for that high levy. So, you might make a decision if you're moving into a retirement scheme to look at the levies. And yes, they might be high, but you might be getting so much more benefits that it's worthwhile. And the same applies like with the lower levies. So, in retirement development, obviously there are lots of other services like restaurants and medical facilities, etc., etc. So you need to also understand what contribution you're making towards that in your levy. And then over and above that, your normal levies is that you would need to obviously pay your rates and taxes on your own. So you would pay a levy, which would include the contributions to the maintenance and other service that's provided to the scheme. And then you would have your normal rates and taxes that applies to the value of your section.
Excellent, great. And I think we're going to get into probably the debate a little bit later, also the life rights versus the sectional title, pros and cons, but thank you. I think you articulated that very nicely. Arthur, welcome to you. And I know in the last 12 years, you've been operating in various roles in, let's call it the senior living sector, not the retirement sector, because I know that at 66, you've just launched a brand new business. And, Colonel Sanders, I think he was 68 when he started KFC. So congratulations. But I'm sure that the retirement sector space is definitely challenging, but also I'm sure rewarding space. And I think certainly as the world adjusts to the new normal with this lockdown and COVID-19. So I'd like to ask you, what trends are you seeing taking place in the retirement living space, especially given the advent of COVID-19 pandemic? I mean, is life more difficult?
Neil, that's a really great question. I think that there have been some trends that have been developing over the past decade or more. And as Barry said, you only have to look north to countries like the US or to Australia and New Zealand to learn what those trends are. I think the first one, there's so many, but I'm going to just put 4 on the table, otherwise I'll be taking too much time. I think the first trend is there's a changing of the guard in terms of people who are living in retirement villages. Most of the current residents are from my parents' generation, the so-called great generation or the silent generation. And they are a very different kettle of fish. I know this is a generalization, but a different kettle of fish to the baby boomer. And your oldest baby boomer, it's that group of people who were born after the Second World War, between 1946 and 64. They see the world very differently. These are people that changed the world of work. They built many of the great commercial empires that are in place in the world today, and they do not see retirement or senior living the same way that their parents did. So that's the first trend, that developers, and in fact, not just retirement villages, but anybody providing products and services to seniors, need to understand the new generation of retiree or senior citizen. Because if you get it wrong, and particularly if you're investing capital in building retirement villages, if you get it wrong, it's going to come back to hurt you. The second thing is, which Alison mentioned, a real issue now, especially with the advent of COVID, is that most middle and many upper middle income South Africans have not put away enough money to fund their retirement. So affordability in terms of retirement solutions really is a very important thing. The retirement village industry is quite an elite industry, because people that are able to buy into that industry have made reasonable retirement savings. And I, having spent 12 years in that industry, I am a firm supporter of retirement villages. I think that if you can afford to purchase into one and afford the levies, it's a great way to go. But many can't. And the over 65 is now the fastest growing age cohort in South Africa. So we're going to have to find solutions around affordability, and that's a bit where my new venture comes to play. The third really important trend is technology. And I suppose I'm just actually mentioning the obvious, but there's such great technology around today that can help with extending people's independence as they age. There's the obvious things like medical emergency response, push of a button and you're talking to a call center. and you've got an ambulance and paramedic on the way, remote monitoring of people and their health, telemedicine. I'll stop there. It's really quite extensive. And retirement developers need to be making sure they're building this new technology into their offering. And even in the space that I'm now about to occupy, the age-in-place model, it's fantastic what technology can do for me as I look to care for a group of people who are living in their own homes or retiring in their own homes. The fourth one is also Barry touched on, is the whole issue of care. You really need to think very carefully if you are someone that is approaching retirement, how you're going to fund that care. You know, just having a medical aid, people think that's enough, but you know, if you need frail care or dementia care or any other kind of specialist late life care, it's usually not funded by a medical aid. So I think that we're going to see some changes there. I think that the product developers in healthcare and medical aids and medical insurance are going to come to the party with new products. And then just finally, COVID changes everything. As Alison said, people's income has been affected by it. Social distancing is important. So all of our offerings to our senior community need to take account of those realities.
Okay, great. And you know, Arthur, I'm also wondering, you I think are a big proponent of the life rights way of purchase. Am I right? Or and maybe you can just, because I want to ask you, you know, you mentioned this whole issue about COVID-19, the impact that it's had on retirement villages, and you know, will they still remain popular in the post-COVID era because of this, you know, this COVID and lockdown and just the financial situation? But would you kind of bring sort of the life rights aspect into it in terms of an argument for life rights? Because I would understand life rights, and tell me if I'm wrong, could be more expensive or less expensive than sectional. I don't know. You're the expert. What are your views on that?
Okay, so first of all, I've always believed, I've been involved with life rights for 12 years. I'm a disciple of life rights. I think it's a great product for middle income South Africans, but I'm not opposed to other forms of retirement living, sectional title and the like. I think it's great that South Africans have got choice and they can choose between different options. The life right model, what I like about it is, you know, just one or two things. You know, the developer remains involved literally for life, which is not the case with sectional title developments. Obviously, they, you know, the body corporate or the homeowners will appoint a managing agent, but that's not, in my mind, quite the same as a developer who really has skin in the game. So, you know, there's that to it. Then there's the fact that, you know, the double-edged sword, the property, the asset belongs to the developer and not the life right holder. So the developer is going to enjoy the capital growth if there is, and not the life right holder. But the life right holder doesn't have the burden of managing a property asset, and not just like managing a home. Barry will tell you that managing a retirement estate is no small business, and you need really deep pockets to be able to manage one effectively. Just by the way, a quick comment on levies. I agree with the comments that have been made on levies, but I would also add, if you're a purchaser, look at the size of the retirement village. Scale is everything in community living. If you're a wealthy person and you can afford to live in a boutique retirement village with 50 or 60 or 100 units, that's fine. But your levies are going to increase at a faster rate just by simple economies of scale. So, you know, if you're someone who's concerned about levies, look to larger retirement estates where the developer is more easily able to keep operating costs down. Just one or two other things on life rights. Someone mentioned special levies. There is a difference of opinion on this, but my understanding of the Housing Development Schemes for Retired Persons Act is that life right developers may not impose special levies, and certainly the organizations I've worked for have never done so. So that's a biggie if you're in a sectional title scheme and it's not been well managed, as Lee said, and you suddenly find that there's a massive maintenance bill, or the lifts need to be replaced, or the roads are collapsing. That all is taken care of by the life right developer. So just a great, you know, I talk about a fair exchange. You lose the capital growth on your investment, but you get fantastic service and support. And you know that life right developer has to be concerned about all of you. You know, if something happens to any one of your residents in a Life Right village, you can't stare out the window. You can't say, well, they can't afford it. You have to find solutions for those people. And that's the great fair exchange in my mind for the Life Right model.
Well, the argument could be, you know, in terms of life rights, most of the, you know, the children are the heirs of the estate. So why don't the people that have made the wealth enjoy their wealth invested into their retirement estate themselves? I don't know whether that's something which people take into consideration.
You know what is worth just registering? A lot of seniors, particularly those that came from my parents' generation, have this thing about legacy. They want to make sure that they can leave their children something, and we all want to do that. But many will actually prejudice their retirement living in order to hold on to that financial legacy, the house that we're not able to sell, or the investment in Old Mutual shares or whatever. And that's very sad, because most adult children I've had to deal with over the last 12 years would much rather that mom and dad were comfortably retired than that they would receive some sort of financial benefit on their passing. And that's, again, what makes Life Right's a great model.
Wonderful, great, nicely articulated there, Arthur. Thanks very much. Okay, Jimmy, we haven't forgotten about you. I mean, you in the game there, particularly in Shwani, and I mean, you're dealing with all these things, life rights versus, you know, sectional title. I mean, is there an alternative to the traditional models, you know, the life rights, etc., or rental options? What are the other options outside of sectional title, life rights, etc., or what are you dealing with?
I don't know how this will assist. It's just a testimony of my own life that I've gone through with my parents, and I don't know whether it's an alternative. If we're going to come down to the financial side of it, you know, and Arthur has touched on that. He's really correct about that. For instance, can I just maybe tell you in terms of the levies in the area that I'm working in? I'm operating in about between 12 and 15 retirement villages in the east of Pretoria. Only two or three of them are on the Life Right model, and the others are on the property right or the sectional title right. And I was asked the other day to do a bit of a research for one of the body corporates to find out whether they are in line now with levies. And I can tell you, it varies in my area, in those 15 retirement villages. The levies vary from between 15 Rand a square meter to 33 Rand a square meter. And yeah, you have to ask about the questions there. You know, really, if you go to 33 Rand a square meter and you live in a 150 square meter retirement village, it's quite a lot of money to think about. Okay, but that's my input into the levies. Look, the property right and the life right, and then there's another option that we haven't spoken about, that maybe we should do about that, is the rental option. You know, there's also a rental option that people can go into. But if you want to take a combination of the two, and you look at life right and you look at the property right, the sensible thing to me would be to do for children that are going to expect some kind of inheritance going forward, is to invest on behalf of their parents into a retirement village and spend some money, and obviously go to dad and ask, you know, is there a bit of assistance? Buy it on my name. It becomes the property then of a property right, and all the capital growth and all the investment growth financially then will go or stay into the family, and then you award this life right to your parents, and then they can live there for as long as they live, or as long as they want to live there. And then if they passes on, obviously the property is in your name, you will then get the benefit of that. You can rent it out in the meantime if you don't want to go and live there yourself, or with a good growth in property or in retirement villages, you can then sell it off. So yeah, there is some kind of a tax implication as well with it, and I don't have the expertise to help you with that. You'll have to go and speak to a financial advisor about that thing. It worked for me perfectly, and I'm just waiting my time. I've done it. I've got a property now. I do the rental thing now. Most probably, if I get to the age of where Arthur go, you know, I'll go and live in my own. I'll just take my little bag, walk up the street, and move into my my property, which I bought 10 years ago. Today, I won't be able to afford that. I must honestly tell you, that's gone. If I haven't done it 10 years ago, retirement is gone. I won't be in a retirement village at my age.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Jimmy. Barry, there's quite a few questions coming around price. Given where obviously we're sitting in pretty tough times, and particularly in the property markets, and the higher end property markets are definitely under pressure at the moment. And there's some questions, and there's two. One is related to, and I know you don't do the KZN area, but the first question is, are there affordable retirement places on the north or south coast in KZN? And if we don't want to do KZN, maybe we can answer on behalf of Gauteng. The comment is they're generally too expensive and hardly inclusive, to just park that one. And then secondly, the retirement properties are mostly in the high financial sector. And I think we touched on that a little bit earlier on. Why not for the middle class? 2 bedroom, 2 bath goes for 3 million are some of the numbers. Do you want to maybe comment on those two?
Yeah, I think affordability is a different discussion for different people. What's affordable to one person is not necessarily affordable to the other. So I think it's difficult to say what's affordable and what isn't. I think any senior living community that is built, as I said to you, your feeder area is generally a 6 to 8 kilometer radius of that site. Okay, and you should any retirement village operator, developer, and I note that a lot of people talk about developers here, and to Arthur's point, retirement or senior living is not just a property development business. In fact, that's a very, very small part of it. It's a tiny part of it, and that's the mistake that is made. People refer to us as developers. We're not developers. We develop our own villages, but our business is not property development. Our business is senior living.
Good point.
It's a very, very important distinction to make. If I go build a shopping center tomorrow, it does not mean that I can go build a retirement village the next day. That they are two totally different things. People mustn't be misguided by thinking that this is a property development game. It isn't. But sorry, I'm just getting back to the question.
No, that's fine. I think it's important to clarify.
So the point of it being expensive, what you should do, you look at your catchment area, which is 6 to 8 k's around where you're building, and your price point should be affordable to the people within that area. That would be my answer. So somebody can't expect to move from an area where the average house price is R1 million into a retirement village where the surrounding house prices are R5 million. That's not a reasonable expectation for anybody to be able to do. So if you are in a R1 million house and there's a retirement village in your area, that retirement village, for it to be feasible, should be pegged at around R1 million. Otherwise, it's not ever going to work. So that's really my answer to that. So if you're in a similar area, you should find something which is a similar price point, and that's why I say that it's horses for courses in terms of affordability. What's good for one person.
I mean, are there developments that are considered affordable around? I mean, I don't know whether, I don't think you are in that sector.
I think
Methodist homes.
I think, as Arthur said, one needs to look at what services are provided, and let's not kid, to provide these services costs money. To be in frail care, if you ever are in frail care, costs money. To run a good frail care operation costs money, and that's not even making a profit out of it. Our model is not necessarily we don't make massive profits out of it. So it just is expensive, and it's a big issue at the moment globally, by the way. It's not a South African thing. So in America, they call it the missing middle. It's a massive problem in the US that most of these senior living communities are targeted at the upper end. Why? Because it is a very, very expensive thing to build. It's a very expensive thing to maintain. It's a very expensive operation to run if you want to run it well. And that's a problem globally. I don't have the answer to it, to be quite honest with you, sitting here. I don't have the answer. But just to give you a bit of a flavor of it, if you look at a normal residential development, a normal sectional title residential development, not retirement, from a development perspective, the non-saleable area in that development, which is generally your corridors and your whatever, is about 10 to 15% of the total gross building area. In a well-designed senior living community, our total saleable area is 40 to 50%, 40 to 50. Now, if you imagine what that has to do to the economics of the whole thing, it changes it considerably, because there's so much of the space that residents are actually getting when they pay for their unit, which appears expensive, but you've got to look at what you're actually getting for it. You know, you compare it to a house price where you're not getting all these things. Now somewhere you're moving into somewhere where you are getting all these things. And in my opinion, if you're paying roughly the same as what you got for your house without all this, it's actually a good deal. So people must look at, I think people need to, it's a bit of a mindset change. People need to look at context. You know, what's the context of what you're buying in terms of the rands and cents? Yes, it might be the same as your house and it might be smaller, sure, but you're getting a world of services and products that you're not getting in your house. And of course, you know, economically somebody has to pay, you have to pay for that.
Excellent. Okay, nicely put. Alison, can a retirement village be called a retirement village without any care solutions being offered? What are your views on that?
I don't think so. No. I really don't. I think that I've spoken to a number of places where they're very proud of the fact that they've cut themselves right down to the bone. They've got one person who's in charge of the management of the village. They don't offer anything. There's nothing. If someone needs care, they have to do it privately, but there's no concern. There's no care. And I don't know about you, but you know, you might have a fall, you might have something in the middle of the night. You need someone to respond immediately. If someone doesn't care at the very outset, what's the point of moving in?
I think if I can just weigh in on that, sorry.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah. I think it depends that's why I said we don't like the word retirement village. What does it actually mean? You know, retiring is a financial thing. You can either afford to carry on work, you have to carry on working, or you can afford not to work. That's got no bearing actually on your day-to-day living needs. So for example, you could have a 48-year-old who's retired. Should they be living in a senior living community? Definitely not. You can have an 85-year-old, which we have. For example, we've got a resident who's 85 years old. He's an orthopedic surgeon, still working. Should he be living in a senior living community? Absolutely he should, because it's appropriate to his needs. So I think the word retirement village, yes, you can have them without any care or any facilities, but it's just a different product to what we call a continuing care senior living community. And that's what we do. And older people aged, the global statistic is the age of people move into these places is 78. If you're 70, 75, let's say, and older, what you should be looking for is a continuing care senior living community. And that has to have, Alison, as you said, it has to have all those facilities, all those services. But a retirement village, you just use that word. It's a very broad term that in South Africa historically has covered a whole lot of different products which aren't necessarily appropriate for people of all ages.
Okay, excellent. I see, Arthur, you wanted to weigh in there?
I want to weigh in just very quickly. I agree in principle that a senior living community or retirement village, whatever you call it, should have a continuous care offering. You know, I think it was Jimmy who said earlier, you know, you don't want to move 2 or 3 times as you age. You want to move once at the end. And if you move into a retirement village, the one that Alison's speaking of, with one nurse sitting in a small room with a stethoscope around her neck, you probably are going to have to move again, because the care when you need it won't be there. So I think that's quite important, that the village you buy into must have the capability. Hopefully you won't need it, but it must have the capability to provide senior care. And then maybe just a moment for me to mention the venture that I'm involved in, Neil, if you don't mind, because it talks to affordability. You know, about 15 or 20 years ago in North America, where the retirement village industry is large, or senior living industry is large, affordability introduced a disruptor, and it was called Age in Place. And it was, you know, organizations who said, you don't need to move into a retirement village, we'll bring the services to you. And I know in South Africa, we all know about home care, that you can, nobody knows about other services. And the Americans called it a NORC, N-O-R-C, a naturally occurring retirement community. So the economics behind it is that you find locations or geographies where there's a high percentage of seniors living in close proximity. You establish an organization, let's call it a NORC for the moment, that will bring services into the home. They use technology and they will help people who either don't want to live in a senior living community. You just get, some people don't, or they can't afford it. So I hope that we're going to see in South Africa more organizations doing what we are starting in providing that additional alternative to seniors as they age. What it means is that you keep your investment in your current home. That's your retirement property. And there are ways that you can liberate some of the capital in that home of yours. I think, you know, we all know what a reverse mortgage is. It wasn't a very popular product, but there are some new products on the market called equity home release, which allow you to stay in your own home, release some capital to fund retirement, and then buy in the services. And the last thing about age in place is you only pay for those services that you require, and you pay for them when you need them.
Excellent. Great. I see Jimmy and I know Alison, I think you stuck up your hand. Did you want to comment to
No, it's fine.
Jimmy, we'll come back to you now, Jimmy. Yeah.
Arthur answered my question. So.
Okay, great. Okay, Jimmy, you want to add into that?
Yeah, I've got a bit of a different take on that, on the care. And you know, the first question about moving into retirement, it's not about the dining hall or the security, which is very important, but what kind of care, frail care, medical care is available. And I think the biggest mistake people, or the biggest no-no that nobody knows about is that there's not a doctor 24/7 on call there. There's not a sister that's looking after you all the time, and you can just buzz somebody to come around and help you there. And I find that in most of the frail care centers in the area that I work, the majority of the people in there are not residents inside the retirement village at all. Those are from people outside there. And a colleague of mine has pinned it down to about 5 or 7% of people living in retirement villages eventually end up in the medical care there. I mean, the other 90%, whatever, are just called up for higher service, you know, from the units and not through the care. And there's a lot of money involved in that frail care center. And that pushes up a lot the levies as well. And I'm not always sure about, because that's a bit of inside information each retirement village have, but it's that there's some kind of a cross-subsidization from the people who are not sick or are not using the facility for those who are in the facility that are not residents there. And some people are not always happy with that and pushes up the levies for that. So I'm not sure. I say to people, and I've got a big retirement village here that's got none of those care, haven't got a frail care, that there's another one just 5 kilometers away from me. Don't pay a lot of money, and strange enough, that's one of the retirement villages with the lowest levies. They don't have a frail care. But 4 kilometers away, there is another one that they can move in tomorrow at a cost.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Lee, I see you want to weigh in there.
I just
sure, Lee.
Yeah, yes, I just wanted to comment on Jimmy's 2 points that Jimmy made. One was that he was asked to compare levies from one scheme to another, and it's a really common question that owners ask or trustees ask. They'll say, is our levy comparable to another scheme that's the same size? And the answer is always going to be no, because the one building is not the same as the other building. And you've got to go and analyze and break down the budget of each body corporate to understand what the costs are related to that specific building. So, to me, it's really a doomed situation or doomed exercise to go and try and compare the one scheme to the other scheme, because, every scheme is different. It's different sizes.
I agree.
One could have, 10 more gardeners working there. So you can't compare that. You've got to look at each individual development on its own as a standalone, understand the budget and understand what your levy is paying for. But to compare the one to the other is really doomed. I don't really see the value in doing that exercise. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Alison, did you want to add to that as well? And Alison, I'm going to give the
Agree.
microphone to you, Barry.
I've seen villages. I think also one of the things that needs to be taken in consideration with doing that exercise is the age of the village. You'll get some villages that have been built over a period of 8 stages. So you've got some villages, some part of the village is 30 years old, and another part of the village might be 5 years old. So, you know, and one will have a water tower, another one will have other challenges. So, and then others are totally off the grid. I think there's too many parameters. One has to, as my mother always used to say, compare apples with apples. And that needs to, and I think not the problem with this industry in overall is the lack of statistics.
Okay.
Neil,
All right.
I think
I'm going to give Barry the chance. Sorry, did you want to just finish off there, Alison, your last comment?
I just said that the difficulty with this industry is that there is very bad statistics on sales.
I would like to know where you do get statistics from, and you know, how's it used. But
well, at the moment, because of the conference and our database, I'm in the process of developing some statistics that I'm happy to share with. But I've also spoken to at FNB, and pardon? He's going to be speaking at the summit next year, and I've asked him to put together a outline of what would be useful, what questions would be useful to provide useful and meaningful statistics. So we're working on that at the moment. We're not ready to do anything, but we are working on something. If anybody wants to add to that project, please contact me with pleasure. The more the better.
I think it's a nice offer. Barry, yes.
I think what's important to note with regard to care is that, and Alison, you talk about statistics. So I'm going to give you some statistics, and this is American statistics.
Cool.
just as applicable here. 40% of people over the age of 85 years old need assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living. Okay? The average age that people move into senior living communities is 78, and the average stay is 10 to 12 years, which means that most people are going to be heading around the age of 85 when they're living in these communities, and 40% of them are going to require, at some point in their stay, assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living. Now, one must distinguish, when one talks about care, one must distinguish between care and medical care. Senior living communities do not really provide medical care. Frail care is actually a South African term. They don't use it overseas. Overseas, they say assisted living. Think about it in that it's assistance with activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, possibly feeding, etc., things like that. I won't say most people, but a high proportion of people living in these communities at some point are going to require that care. So to say that you can move into somewhere where that care is non-existent, I think people are just fooling themselves. That at some point you want to know that it's there. It's very important. So yes, it might impact on, it might make the levy more. Of course it does. I mean, let's not kid. Obviously it does. But that is why you're moving in there, for the knowledge of knowing that if you need it, that care is there. Now, most people don't have massive prior warning when they need this care. It happens very, very quickly. And you can't be in a position where you have to procure it somewhere else at short notice, because all the good care facilities, to be quite honest with you, are generally full. So it becomes a very difficult situation when all of a sudden your needs change. And the older you get, to be honest, just physiologically, the older you get, the more precarious your health becomes. So a 75-year-old is a lot less statistically likely to all of a sudden need care than an 87-year-old, for argument's sake, obviously. But that 87-year-old, if they do need care in a hurry, it becomes a lot more difficult for them to all of a sudden have to pack up and move and find somewhere where they can get that care, especially if they're married, for argument's sake, and there's one spouse living in the community. They don't want to be split up and go move somewhere else. So yes, it is. Of course, it has an impact on monthly costs, but you know, it's an important factor to consider for people. And I don't think that that we are, if I'm speaking from an operator's perspective, I don't think that we're fulfilling our residents' needs by anyone in the industry, sorry, I should say, is fulfilling any prospective residents' needs by not offering care.
Okay, great. I want to just get onto the question, Jimmy, before I get to you. I've got a couple of questions that I just want to get out there answered. And it's actually for you, Lee. And the question is, can a sectional title model cohabit with a rental model within one roof?
No, look, I mean, you've got to understand that sectional title means that you own the section. It doesn't mean that you are obligated to actually live in there. So, you know, from an investment perspective, somebody could go and buy a sectional title unit in a retirement scheme and use it as an investment by renting it out to somebody that maybe needs to be living in a retirement scheme. So, you know, on the same premise, that person or couple that then occupies a space would actually rent from that owner. I think the question probably relates more to like a rental scheme kind of scenario. And I'm almost 100% sure that yes, a scheme like that could or can work in a sectional title development. I think the thing to maybe consider is that if the developer has actually considered that, because again, going back to the rules, the developer could potentially amend rules to make provision for that or actually prevent that from taking place. But that doesn't mean that if the rules have been amended to not allow it, that the members could then change those rules again as they go along. So, you know, again, the principle is that a sectional title unit, there's no obligation for the owner of that unit to actually live in it. And by that means, if it's an investment, they could rent it out to an older couple that rents from them and then benefits from the facilities. On the facilities side, again, there you might have to look at, you know, what are the terms of the developer, you know, what is the sale terms of that section and unit. You might find that in that agreement, the sale agreement, that the person that purchases may actually not do that. So, you know, but again, the answer is yes, it can work. Two is you've got to look at the sale agreements. Are there any restrictions on the purchaser in that regard?
Can I just make some points on this?
Sure.
If we've got time, Neil, I'm asking.
Yes, yeah.
It's a very good
more question, but you can go for it.
Okay,
yes,
I think it's a very good question. Rentals, in my opinion, is a big problem in this space. And I'll tell you why, for a number of reasons. Firstly, South Africa is a high inflation environment. People's life expectancies are uncertain. And you don't know how damaging the impact of an annual rental escalation of 6 to 8% will have if you project it out into the future as you get older. So that's the first problem with a rental. It's a bit of an open-ended story. You don't know, you know, what your future lease commitment is going to be, and people with a fixed amount of capital could run into problems. The second one is it doesn't give you security of tenure. So the important point here for older people is they want to move once. You don't know what who your landlord's going to be and what their intention is. So you say you buy in a retirement village as an investment, and investments tend to get sold because that's what an investment is. So the next guy might not want the tenant in there, and he might give you notice and say, well, I want to move in there myself. Cheers, thank you very much. And then you've got an 88-year-old person looking for a new place somewhere with diminished capital because they've been paying someone else's return for all these years. So in my opinion, a rental model in retirement is not a sound decision for a number of reasons. So just personally, I would kind of tend to steer people away from looking at a rental.
I think it's a short-term solution.
I think it goes in line with sort of the rent versus buy argument, and I think it's always best to invest and buy into your own piece of real estate.
Yes, it is. But for old people, it's less about the investment and more about the practical reality of the rental, which is, you know, the rapid escalating number with no security of tenure. It's exactly not what you want in your older years, in your later years.
Oh, although we'll look at what the rentals are looking like today. In fact, I think FNB just announced very recently the first time there's a decline, and they project a decline in rentals going forward. So because of COVID-19 and lockdown, so it could have the opposite effect. But I hear what you're saying. I think it's a very important point you've made, and I agree with that. I'm going to ask Arthur. And it's probably a little bit of a general question, quite a difficult one, but it relates to life rights. And it says, as a single person, will it be better to buy a life right unit? I mean, it's your thoughts on that?
Look, this person is obviously looking to buy into senior living. My advice to that person would be to look at all the alternatives. I personally, as I've said already on this webinar, I'm a big fan of life rights, provided that you purchase with a developer or life right owner that is solid, financially solid, has a good track record. To me, I think as a single person, it's an excellent thing to do. But you know, it's location driven, as Barry said earlier. So look in the 13-kilometer radius around where you stay at the moment, see what is available. Don't discount other options, but yes, life rights I think are a great product if it's provided by, there's some big players in the market now. Barry's own company, Old Mutual, have moved in, the Amdec Property Group. You know, those are large developers who put their muscle behind the life right product.
I think
okay.
If I could can I just add something in there, Neil?
Again, yes, you can. Yes. Yes, yes. And then we're going to do the wrap up after that. So, yeah.
My wife normally does all the talking, so if I get an open mic, just one more thing about the life rights. When someone, and it goes to the sectional title issue as well, when someone is buying into a senior living community, what they want to know in the long term is that there's an operator who is incentivized in the long term to ensure that community is run in a way that benefits the resident to the maximum. Okay, in other words, is run as best as possible. So there's two things here. Firstly, a life rights operator makes their money on resale of life rights, so they have a financial incentive in the long term, as Arthur said earlier, to ensure that this village is run very well. In the other respect, in the sectional title development, a sectional title development is actually run by the body corporate, which consists of residents. Now, Arthur will tell you, having been in the same industry that I've been in, it is incredibly complicated to run a senior living community. Not only is it expensive, you can see Arthur's gray hair there, how he got it. It is incredibly complicated to run these things, and it takes an incredible amount of skill and experience and diligence and hard work, etc. Now, that is best left to a professional operator. In a sectional title development, any sectional title development is run by the residents, but by a body corporate of owners, I should say, not necessarily of owners. They maybe have different incentives, and the people on the body corporate are, I won't say generally, often are talking to their own interests rather than the interest of the community, and it can become a very challenging situation. And that's why we believe that the life rights model it aligns the interests of everyone a lot better than a sectional title, specifically retirement. I'm not saying sectional title, of course, is great for normal residential, but in our opinion, that's the primary advantage of a life right, is that you're actually buying into a professionally managed community, which you know will be around and will be with you in the long term.
Yeah, I see you wanted to urgently put up your hand there, Lee. Just the final comments before we get to the wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, I want to, and I absolutely agree with Barry in that regard. You know, the problem with owners, bodies corporate in general, is that the trustees, unless you have external people that are being brought in to stand as professional trustees, and they get paid to do a job. You know, the biggest problem is that it's the personal emotion that goes with the management. People make decisions because they're upset with the guy next door whose dog's been barking for the last 10 days. They make a decision that's actually not to the benefit of the body corporate. And because of that, a lot of things don't happen in the body corporate. You know, decisions don't get taken, levies don't get increased, maintenance is not done, etc., etc. So in that regard, I do agree with Barry that I think the sectional title model for retirement villages, etc., is probably not the best model for that kind of development. The other thing I also just want to quickly, my last point was, somebody mentioned about the actual developer staying involved in the scheme versus the body corporate having to take over. Again, that comes down to the developer. If he's running the scheme, he's going to do things to make sure that that's working optimal, because he's got an investment there. He's got an opportunity to ensure that the development is actually is a successful development. Where once it becomes a body corporate, again, you get people that are part-timers, people that maybe work during the day. Yes, older people don't necessarily work during the day, and they have got the time and stuff, but they don't have the knowledge and the experience. And I think that's where when people look at the opportunities or the options, is to look and see, is it a sectional title? And then look at how the management structure is of that body corporate. Who are the people that are actually running the show? Walk around the area, look at the maintenance, all the streets nice and tidy, whatever it is, if it's an estate and an HOA. So I think those are very two important things to consider when going into that kind of development.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so on that note, can you believe it? We got 15 minutes to go. We had a long debate. It's been very interesting. I think it's been a great discussion. Some really good points have come out of it. I would just like to do a roundtable on everybody, just to give your final parting shots, your 3-4 minutes, final thoughts, leaving people with some advice, and I think some really good ideas have been shared over here. Robust discussion on life rights versus sectional title, looking at rental, that kind of thing. So I'm going to start off with you, Jim. If you could give us your wrap up, your final thoughts, your final advice, something that somebody can take forward with them and say, you've given me a solution.
Neil, yes. Retirement is a very stressful time. And I mean, if you are 50 years of age, you should start thinking about that. And my motto was always to say, rather sooner than later. It's going to be stressful. So start looking at retirement, do it earlier. Most of the people I'm dealing with, they tell me, I'm not ready for retirement. And then you're looking at people 80 and 85 and they walk with a walking stick or sit in a wheelchair and so on. And then it's too late. So how can I put it? Rather sooner than later. Rather take this jump sooner than later. You can adapt, to the retirement village. Don't wait too long. I've seen too many stories of people that's left it too late to do the move, and then it becomes really the last move, and it's a very, very negative situation. We've got this saying in the industry that there's always a time to buy, to sell, to move, to whatever. There's always a time, and it's so easy. The time is now. Once you've decided or you've been looking at that, start now and do the thing now. And in retrospect, 4 or 5 years down the line, you will look back and you will say, well, you know what? That was the right decision I've made.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. A nice way to wrap up, Jimmy. Barry, if you could give us your wrap up, please, and your final thoughts and parting shots.
Thanks. I think the industry is changing rapidly globally, and in South Africa, we're catching up. And I think what people need to be cognizant of is that the senior living communities that we're building now are vibrant, attractive places, which is not somewhere like it used to be in the old days, a place of last resort where your kids said, okay, now you must go into retirement. That's not what it is. And I think people should just be cognizant of that, and that they're buying into a lifestyle, not just a product. It's not just about the bricks and mortar. And they must really do their homework. And as I said, there's no better research you can do than talking to the residents in a specific community and asking them how they found it there. And in my mind, you don't actually have to do anything else. But the important thing is to look at it as it is an attractive destination. You should definitely do it sooner rather than later, because you actually want to be able to enjoy your life there. And there's just so much on offer, and so much that you cannot get living on your own outside of these communities. And you should really just educate yourself as to what that is.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution today, Barry. Alison, your final thoughts, please.
I agree with Barry. And I think that people need to think more about what their retirement needs, what kind of retirement they actually want, and which retirement village or solution will best provide that type of living that they want to experience going forward. Also, I think the thing that we touched on earlier is that the people who are retiring now are much younger than the people who were previously, and they're a different kettle of fish. They're more opinionated, they're a lot more technologically advanced, and they have different expectations. And a lot more people will continue to work in their retirement. And I think villages need to be geared towards that different stage as we age.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alison, and it's wonderful having you on this webinar. Thank you for your input as well. Lee, your final thoughts and your parting shots for our audience today.
I think that, like anything, I need what you do need to do is you need to do your investigation. You need to understand what you're actually buying into. Buying a unit for a certain price, a lot of people think, oh, well, I can afford 3 million rand, so let's do it. But you need to understand again, the body corporate strategy. I'm specifically talking about a sectional title development. Understand what you're buying into. Look at the financials of the scheme. Walk around the scheme. Understand how it's maintained. If it's badly maintained, I can guarantee you now, somewhere down the line, it's going to cost you money. Understand what your levy is made up of, and try and understand the management structure, because somebody needs to manage the body corporate. And again, unless people are brought in that are paid, that are professionals, you're going to have to rely on the people that actually own the scheme. So, I see it so many times where people buy into a sectional title scheme, just generally, and then you won't believe this. They'll send an email to the manager and say, well, why am I paying a levy? Or what is my levy for? You need to understand what you're buying into. So, don't be surprised once you've bought and you've moved in and you suddenly need to pay a special levy because the body corporate doesn't have finances. You've got all the opportunities, all the information is there. Look at the finances, look at the budget. Just understand what you're buying into and then make the decision. That's the best I can do.
Great stuff. Wonderful. Nice way to end off there, Lee. Thank you very much for your contribution. And Arthur, do you want to give us your parting shots and thoughts and way forward?
Parting shots is that I think that the senior living space is going to be a very exciting place to be involved in over the next decade. I think that COVID-19 has pushed the reset button on almost everything that we do. There is space for innovation and new things to be brought into this industry. And personally, I'm very passionate about seniors. I believe that in our modern world, seniors have been left to the side somewhat. They've been diminished, forgotten about, not taken seriously. And my passion is to change that. Certainly in the endeavors I'm involved in, my passion is to make sure that seniors get the help they need to be able to retire, and that we don't lose the fantastic wisdom and ideas and strength and energy that they still have to offer in our communities. So yeah, I'm excited. Bring it on.
Wonderful. And thank you for ending on that high note there, Arthur. Thank you very much. So I would like to thank each and every one of you, our panelists, for your valuable contribution today. We'd love this discussion to carry on. And I know that there were a lot of questions that were unanswered. We will post it on the remag.co.za website under education, ask the property experts, or if you have any new questions, then you can post it to info@reimag.co.za. For those of you who had to either leave early or missed part of this webinar or missed it completely or would like to pass it on to somebody else, you can access it on the remag.co.za website under shows, and you click on webinars and Let's Talk Property and you can view it there. And we do get a lot of replays, so I encourage you to probably be posted by tomorrow morning. We'll have it up on the site, so please make sure to look out for that. Okay, then, so first of all, to our panelists, Jimmy Dupree of C Properties, thank you very much. To Barry Kagan of Aurea Senior Living, Alison Watt of Retirement Development Summit, Lee Mangard of Sectional Title Consultant and Trainer, and of course, Arthur Case is from ResCare. And I think I'll leave you with a little bit of an inspirational quote for today. And it's around retirement. And they say retirement is the only time in your life when time no longer equals money. So maybe I'll leave you with that. So don't forget about next week's webinar. And that will be hosted also, Let's Talk Property. It'll either be by Eugene Boniface, Ilan, or be Derek Watts. And in fact, we're going to be talking about property investments next week. So we look forward to seeing you next week at exactly the same time, 11 o'clock. And then also we have a very special offshore investment webinar tomorrow. And that will be from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock with one of South Africa's leading residential property developers, John Raby. And he'll be sharing opportunities to invest in Portugal. And I know we had some questions about people wanting to retire offshore, senior living offshore. Well, there was a few questions which we didn't manage to get to on this webinar today. So, but this is a little bit about investment offshore in Portugal. Just click on the link below or go to the Remake website. It's on the front page to register. And then, of course, don't forget about the Let's Talk Property Virtual Property Masterclass. And that's going to be on Wednesday, the 14th of October. It's almost going to be a full morning webinar. And we're going to have multiple speakers from property developers, mainly for first-time home buyers and investors. Once again, you can also register that on the link below. And on that note, thank you once again for all joining us. It was wonderful, and thank you again to the panel. I think we had really great discussion, and hopefully in the future we could host another similar webinar this time in the future and monitor the changes that are happening. And so thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you next week at the same time. This is Neil Peterson of Let's Talk Property signing out. Stay safe, everybody. Keep well.
Yes.